Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Oh, do we have so much to talk about this Friday morning? I mean, you know the deal. It's on the TV. My new shirt is on me, and I've got like 3 and a little pages of notes because this episode, it's a biggie. So why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in spoiler-filled into WandaVision episode 6. And this is a new experience for me because last night I was doing some work and then it was like late. By the time everything was up, I was like, might as well just stay up to WandaVision. Watched the episode, did my non-spoiler, watched the episode again, took my notes, and was getting ready to film, and I was shot. I mean, I probably still look pretty shot. I was like, you know what? I need a nap because I do have like a full work day after all the WandaVision stuff. So I was like, let's take a nap. Let's get back up. The sun is out, which we don't usually have when we do these reviews at like 4:30 in the morning. The title for the episode is up. I never see that until after I put up all my reviews. And the title this week, shouldn't be a shock. All New Halloween Spooktacular, which of course was a big old 90s trope. And, I don't know how many sitcoms I watch nowadays. I'd assume they probably do the same thing, but particularly around holidays, Valentine's Day, Halloween, Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, you'd get some oversized episode where like maybe you have a guest star who's a pretty big deal for us. That's Pietro all episode. Sometimes you'd get 2-parters around a tacular, if you will. And the abruptness to the end of this episode, I was like so locked in, and then it ended. I was like almost like I was about to, kind of like when Wile E. Coyote runs out into like the nothingness, and then all of a sudden he has that second of clarity and he looks down, he's like, oh no, there's nothing below me, and he falls. That's how I felt when it ended. Like I thought we had at least 5 more minutes, and then it was over. I was like, what do I do now? And to be honest, I was kind of surprised we didn't get the to be continued. I don't feel like I've seen every shot of Wanda and Vision from the trailers in this episode, so like I kind of feel like the next episode might pick up right where we left off at like the end of Halloween. But that aside, like I said, it's a new experience. It's usually dark when I'm talking, I'm just rolling. But like I said in my non-spoiler review, I think Kevin Feige is a freaking genius. So much so, I labeled that video, Feige is a puppet master, and we his puppets, man, because I said it last week to you, and I didn't even stop myself from going down the rabbit holes. But something about the amount of clues, the amount of blatantly obvious clues, and the amount of stuff that's leaked, specifically over the last couple of weeks, all of which I've avoided like the plague, but I've heard have come out. Like, people saw stuff with Pietro from this episode like 2 weeks ago. And like I said last week, Kevin Feige has been doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe thing for over a decade. Have we ever had a major leak outside of Tom Holland or, Mark Ruffalo accidentally spilling the beans on something? No, I mean, he has had the MCU so, just tightly planned and fit together so perfectly. No room for error. Specifically with some of the surprises that he's given us. Things like Spider-Man. Like, we didn't know about Spider-Man until that trailer dropped for Civil War. Everything that was going on with Endgame. Who was dying? Who wasn't? What was going to happen? Like, none of this stuff has ever gotten out. And even with the clues that or Easter eggs that, Marvel puts in the movies, you never feel like the movie gets tipped to you because of things inside the episode. And yet, WandaVision feels like every episode we have a ton of clues that are pretty obvious to most of us. And for those that we can't figure out, we usually go to New Rockstars. If you've never checked out New Rockstars, highly, highly recommend them. Those guys, man, Specifically, I think Evan is the main guy's name. The things they see are crazy. And there is a ton of stuff in every episode. But like I said, some of the big theory stuff is pretty just in your face. So much so that, like, what was it, 2 weeks or a week ago when that poster dropped? Like, there was a devil head dead center of that wallpaper that looked nothing like the rest of the wallpaper. And, like, dead center of the poster was impossible to miss. It almost felt like it was being force-fed to us to just eat up all the goodies in front of us and know that you've got a crazy comic fan base and you have people that, you know, like when the movies come out, they go frame by frame and they find everything known to man except for, I think, one thing in either Guardians or Guardians 2 that's still never been discovered that James Gunn won't tell anybody about. But I mean, like, Feige knows this is how the fan base reacts. And he left us a trail of breadcrumbs that led us straight to thinking Mephisto, that made us think Agatha Harkness, made us think Nightmare. And then you get into this episode, and the vibes keep coming, man. I mean, Pietro dropped so many hints about hell. I was like, he's got to be Mephisto or Nightmare. And then he says Nightmare in the episode. Let's see. He goes, I think one of the things is like, you know, like, who knew Westview, New Jersey would be fun as hell? He calls the kids demon spawn and then actually refers to nightmares, like directly to Wanda before she ends up blasting them right at the end of the episode. And like, I'm just sitting there watching. I'm like, oh, dude, like, it's so obvious, but like, it makes perfect sense to do it. And like, that's where they got to be going. And then you get to the end of this episode, and Wanda just goes full Scarlet Witch, man. And you see for the first time with your own eyes what it is that she's actually doing and how she can do it. It leads me to just go right back to the very first thing I said when the show was announced. That it was going to run into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But this was all Wanda. Wanda had an emotional break. So much so that she kind of splintered her psyche to a degree and trapped herself inside of an anomaly that she eventually started to realize was going on, and then that she had full control of. We know that there are missing episodes, so I think there are things that happened, specifically in the 50s and 60s, that kind of helped Wanda understand how much power she has in this world and exactly what's going on. But the way this episode leaves it pretty much looks like it's been all Wanda from the jump. Nobody pulling any strings. I think at this point, if there is a big bad that's not Wanda, it's somebody who has noticed that Wanda is like overly powerful. I think it's one of those things where maybe we do have a situation where, like, you know, Mephisto or Nightmare do exist as these demonic entities and can traverse the multiverse. And maybe they were aware of Wanda, but thought she was inconsequential. Like, not real magic comes from this stone, and then this happens, and almost like an alarm would go off somewhere where it's like, whoa, high power of like magic registered. What is that? And now you're trying to get in and figure out what's going on. It feels like we're somewhere in there where, like, this is mostly Wanda, and maybe the bad guys got alerted to like how powerful she was and was like, I'd like to recruit that, or I'd like to get some kids out of that. And we still don't have all the answers, right? Like, even if it is all Wanda, what is the purpose of it? Why is she, you know, letting it continue? I mean, she even says to, you know, Evan Peters' Pietro at one point, like, you don't think it's wrong what I'm doing? And he's like, no, it's impressive. I'm telling you, it's not Pietro. You would not say that to Wanda. But, like, she still doesn't, I don't think, fully understand. And why the sitcoms? The only thing I can think of that is, like, maybe her and Pietro when they weren't being experimented on or working on their powers, like they were allowed to watch like a tube television that played like Nick at Night with all the old school sitcoms. And maybe that was just what her brain did as a defense mechanism to kind of create all of this. But I just sat there, man, at the end of the episode. I was like, Kevin Feige, you are smarter than all of us, always. And everything, I almost feel like every theory we've come up with, you can almost throw out the door outside of my Magneto theory, which maybe could be still what's going on. I mean, that's the great thing. They're all still in play, even though right now this episode makes you think that there isn't someone above everything. But those are my general spoiler thoughts on the episode. Now I want to go through everything, because this episode's got so much. So strap in, kiddies. We got a ride ahead of us. And the show opens with almost verbatim the Malcolm in the Middle open. Loved it. Geeked out so hard, man, because I was a big Malcolm in the Middle fan, and as soon as it came on, I was like, oh, we are so already in the 90s, and I love to have the show open like that. And the other thing too, I don't know all the lyrics, but the theme songs every week are so good, and like I feel like there are more clues in there than anyone's paying attention to. Maybe that's the place where Kevin Feige's putting all the clues as to what's really going on, while he's just baiting us with all this other stuff out there. But absolutely loved the open, and at the end of it, you get with Pietro, as like the kooky uncle or whatever. It doesn't say as the kooky uncle, but like that's how he's acting when he's outside. And you see right there, and then throughout the entire episode, that anytime Quicksilver takes off, or he brings Speed and Wiccan with him, or anytime Pietro takes off with Billy and Tommy, the movements look like the MCU movements for Quicksilver, not the Fox Quicksilver stuff. Like there's almost a point where like he took off a couple times, and like in the Fox movies, you do see him take off, and then we usually get to join him while everything slows down to like a dead stop, and I was waiting for it in the episode. It never ever comes, which to me is just another hint to the fact that Pietro is not the guy we think he is. And even if you think he was someone different, he might not be that guy either. But I kind of dug that. Then you get out of the open, and the first thing you see, much like Malcolm in the Middle, you'd have, in this particular instance, it's Billy. He's talking directly to the camera, and he's already dressed up like Wiccan. I freaked out, man. It was so awesome. I was like, oh, they've got him dressed just like the classic costume. And then naturally, Wanda comes down. She's in her classic costume. Vision comes down. He's in his classic costume. Pietro and Tommy, nah. I mean, at one point, Billy goes, where's your costume? He's like, I'm wearing my costume. I'm the cool brother. And he's like, Billy's like, what does that make me? I think he calls him like a nerdosaur or something like that. Oh, more classic 90s stuff, man. Like where you would just invent words or like digs on people, around a word. So I love that. But, him and Pietro have no costume, and the whole open kind of goes, and eventually, Wanda's even like, you don't have any costumes. And Pietro darts out with Tommy. It's funny. I thought Tommy was running around full speed the whole time. He's not. Up until the end, every time he's moving fast, or him and Billy are moving fast, it's because Pietro is holding it and taking them with him. Which is just fun because it allows them to create like some mayhem in a little bit. But when they come back, they're wearing the classic Quicksilver costume, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And like, I love those types of things because the comic nerd in me gets all excited. So you see Billy and Tommy kind of interacting, and then they're talking about old Uncle Pietro who's passed out on the couch. Like, don't wake him up. Oh, maybe we should mess with him. And then he jumps up and moves really fast and scares him. I love what Peters is doing, man. Like, no matter what version of Pietro he is, or if he's Pietro, or anything that's going on, the way he's playing the character is fantastic. And the enjoyment level of the amount of, like, he's getting legit joy in everything he's doing. He's totally stirring up trouble and things that I think are going to lead to, like, a massive event by the end of all of this. Yeah, so you see Pietro, he scares him. Then Wanda comes down. She's got her costume on, and I love it. Billy's like, Mom, that's awesome. Who are you? Old Red Riding Hood? And I thought they were going to do it. I was like, oh my gosh, they just set up the opportunity for Wanda to give her own nickname. And she goes, I'm a Sokovian, who were the people that look, fortune teller. I'm a Sokovian fortune teller. I was like, I thought that was going to be the moment where she gives herself the nickname. But I still like the idea that if this is leading into Spider-Man 3 and has some kind of impact on that, I think you can see J. Jonah Jameson claim or name her Scarlet Witch. That would be so cool. But we'll see, because it's a Spider-Man movie, remember? So I'll be interested to see how much MCU crossover there is, and if they go that deep, allowing like a Sony character to name one of their own characters. But it would be a really cool way to tie that in. Anyway, I digress. We have so much to talk about. Then I love that Pietro goes to her. He's, like when she says I'm a Sokovian fortune teller, like billion times, like, oh, that's rad. And he's like, that's so lame. Like, this is worse than the costumes that Mom got us the year typhoid hit. Or typhus, the year typhus hit. And like you see this shot, and this is the darkest episode, man. You see these two kids. I don't even remember if they were dressed up as anything that you would recognize, but they're going, I think they have some kind of costume on, and they're going door to door, and like you're getting like raw fish, and the people look dirty, and it's gross and disgusting, and they come back, and Wanda's like, well, that's not how I remember it. And immediately, man, like the minute she says it, I'm like, you remember it differently because it happened differently. Like, this Pietro is clearly got like information, but not necessarily like exact information. And Wanda's gonna play with that the whole episode, which was fantastic to watch. And then the other thing too is like when she says that's not how I remembered it, Pietro's immediate response to her is, well, it's one of those like deeply suppressed memories that you have, like that you just hid away, which I think is a hint to the fact that like all of the trauma that's happened to Wanda over the years, she suppressed and suppressed and suppressed, and then it exploded, and that's what we're in now. I can't believe Feige went with the thing that was like what we were saying right from before the show even came out, or at least at this point, that's how it looks. But I love that, like he's almost willingly trying to control or influence her, right? Like, oh, you don't remember that because you buried it. Like, it's not because I got it wrong. Like I said, I love how they play with that all episode. Then Vision finally comes downstairs. He's got his Vision costume on, and Peter's like makes fun of him. He's like, "What are you supposed to be, man? Like a stoplight, a half-shucked piece of corn, a booger? That's it." Like. Playing the jerky cool guy uncle so well. But Vision comes down, and basically like they're interacting. Him and Wanda kind of have like a nice little cute back and forth, and like for a second you're like, what, how does she get him back into it so easily, specifically after what happened at the end of last episode? Like, he seems to be okay with everything again, and then we find out he's not. He's like, all right, I'm off. And she's like, where are you going? We're going to go trick-or-treating. He's like, I'm working with, the neighborhood watch tonight and the boys. She's like, and I love the first thing she said, you're not supposed to do. You didn't tell me that you had plans. And then you cut back to Billy. He talks right to the camera again, like you would in Malcolm in the Middle. And he's like, yeah, Mom and Dad, they're not fighting, but they're not like the happiest with each other, and things have been kind of weird, specifically since Uncle Pietro got here. And Vision leaves, and as Vision leaves, like you start to realize, like, oh, Vision is mad still, and he's just trying to figure it out, man. He's playing possum, he's playing along till he can figure out what's going on and how to stop it. But he eventually just like takes off, or is getting ready to, and as Wanda's kind of like, but it's the kid's first Halloween, you have to be here. And Pietro immediately steps up. He's like, hey, you need a male influence with you. I got that XY chromosome, man. Like, I could be, the fatherly, the male figure that the kids need on their first Halloween. Like, Viz, you go do what you gotta do, man. I got this. And you're like, he wants these kids, and he wants to have influence on them and Wanda away from Vision. Which, like I said, it can't be the Fox Quicksilver. It could maybe physically be his body, but I don't even think that's the case now. I think it's all an illusion of some kind to try to mess with Wanda and influence her in the direction that, the big bad, or whoever is after the kids, which I still think is the main goal of whatever big bad there is. It seems like, like that he's trying to steer them to where he or the person he's working for wants them to go inside of this anomaly. So I love that, and then he jumps out with Tommy, and they come back with, the classic Quicksilver look, which was just awesome to see. Then we jump outside of the anomaly, and we see Monica picking up right where the end of the last episode left, right? Hayward's coming in. Monica's hot on his heels. Like, what is the deal? Like, you could have just ruined everything by taking that shot at Wanda. And Hayward is gone full, like, evil, man. He's like, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Like, you take her out, this is all over. And like Monica says, she's like, we don't know what happens to us, what happens to the people inside the anomaly if Wanda dies. Does it last forever and then they're just trapped, and with no Wanda, we can't break whatever spell she's got going on here? Whatever hex she's got going on? And what if she dies and it expands or something like that? Like, they don't say any of this, but these are the things you're inferring as you're watching this back and forth. And Hayward's just like, well, you gave me the reason and the thing I was looking for. You're stepping out of line. You're being insubordinate. He goes so deep, man. Like, there's literally a moment where he's like, maybe it was good that you weren't here when your mother died, because you were clearly not up for this or cut out for this. I was like, oh, damn, Hayward, like, gloves off. Like, you are a bigger dick than any of us thought. And then immediately he makes a joke about, like, Darcey, like, do you work with us? And where's, like, the other friend that's gonna pop in with your little trio? And then Jimmy steps up. He's like, all three of you are sidelined. Get out. Like, take him out of here. And he basically benches him. And, like, Monica says, Hayward was looking for a reason to bench us. And because Jimmy's like, he is grossly overusing his powers right now. Like, he can't do or say some of the things that he just said. And, like, Monica's like, he's looking for a reason to sideline us, and we gave him one. But we're not done. We're going to go sneak back in. So they go to, like, they got these giant shipping containers, and they go inside one of them and come back out, and they've got, like, all sword gear on, and, like, they put the hats on so that they can, I guess, traverse unnoticed. It's dark out, so maybe you wouldn't notice. But, you see them getting ready or whatever, and, like, as they're getting ready to go, they're moving toward, like, the place that they're going to go. And Monica and Jimmy just break rank and start kicking the crap out of everybody. And it's awesome, man. Like, Darcey's just kind of standing there like, nobody told me the plan. He even says at the end, she's like, why didn't anyone tell me what the plan was? And, Monica, we know she can kick ass. And you see her, getting it on with some people. But then Jimmy Woo, like, threw down. Like, I would not want to get into a fight with Jimmy Woo. And it was awesome to watch him do that. And, like, it immediately made me think of that line he had a couple weeks ago where, he was saying something to Hayward, and Hayward's like, isn't someone at Quantico missing you? Like, can you get out of my hair? And he's like, no, sir. Softball season's over, sir. Kind of was like a hint to the fact that he's probably coordinated or really, really good at softball. And then, like, to see him in action, I was like, get it, Jimmy Woo? So that was just a lot of fun. And then they're able to go into, the room or whatever that's set up in one of those tents at Sword. And as they do that, we go back in to trick-or-treating. And you have Billy and Tommy are running around getting candy. All the kids that have been missing in Westview this whole time are all here for the spooktacular. Like, they're all out. They're all trick-or-treating. And they're walking. Pietro and Wanda are talking. And that's the moment where, like, Pietro, like, they do something and he's like, oh man, their little demons spawn. And, like, in the comics, they are legitimately demon spawn. Like, Wanda creates them, as we've talked about, from a piece of Mephisto's soul. And as soon as he said it, I was like, ooh, like Mephisto, or working for Mephisto, or I think we're still in that realm. And eventually they'll knock me out of feeling like that. But, then as they're walking and talking, Wanda's like, who was the kid that, like, used to pick on you when we were little? And, she may have mentioned when they were 10. I don't remember if she said specific age. But basically, it's like, and he immediately goes, you're testing me. Like, you're testing me because my story didn't line up with you and I don't look like myself. And it's one of those weird things where he even, like, says that out loud. He's like, look, I get it. I'm not mad. I understand. I don't look like myself. And Wanda's like, yeah, why don't you look like yourself? Like, if she's in control of everything, whenever this being came into the anomaly, why would she make him look like Evan Peters' Pietro? And he goes, you tell me. Like, this is your gig. I was, I got shot in the middle of the street, and then I'm just in darkness, and all of a sudden I hear you calling out, and then I'm here. And he's like, look, if I had found Shangri-La, I probably wouldn't want to dwell in the past either. Almost saying, like, the reason I don't look like your brother is because you don't want that memory, like, in the forefront all the time. You must have changed the way I look to help not remember what happened to Pietro. And you're like, it is interesting, right? Because everybody that comes in gets altered by Wanda. So could it be Pietro? And, like, that's how she changed him? Early in the episode, you're certainly thinking that that's an option. By the end of the episode, definitely not an option. That's not Pietro. Not our Pietro. I just had a thought. What if, when that call goes out, wherever Pietro is a place where Nightmare or Mephisto exist, and they kind of intercept that call and swap play. Maybe that. Again, I'm playing right into Kevin Feige's hands, though. And we're at the end of our first page. We got so much to talk about. So I love that, right? Like, that he, like, acknowledges, like, I know I look different. And he is literally coming up with every answer, every thought to try to comfort Wanda and get her to come over to his side, trust him. So clearly, I think he's got motivations, and he wants to influence things inside of the anomaly. But absolutely love that. And then you see him run off with the kids, and they start to create mayhem, right? So, like, they take off to go get candy, and he's taking them with him, going super, super fast. And you see Herb. I've been talking about Herb for a couple weeks, because it seems like he acts the way Agnes acts. And sure enough, exact same kind of interaction with Wanda. Wanda comes up, they're kind of talking back and forth. And he's like, she's like, how's the neighborhood watch stuff going? He's like, it's not bad. Pretty quiet so far. And then he gets like a buzz. He's like, hold on. And he's like, wait, all the candy is gone? And now all the pumpkins have been smashed. And everybody's covered in silly string. And then behind him, you see the blurs moving around as all the candy disappears. And, like, the kids are looking in their bag, like, what happened? Then all the pumpkins are smashed. Everybody gets covered in silly string. And is really, like, it's a funny scene, like, to watch in the background. Like I said, the humor in the first half of this episode is crazy good. And then Wanda's like, well, maybe Vision could help you. And Herb goes, Vision, he's not on patrol right now. And Wanda's like, huh. And Herb breaks character and goes, but is everything okay with you? Do you need me to change anything? Like, very much like the way Agnes talked to her. Like, hey, if there's something wrong with the episode or something not working for you, I'll gladly change it, man. Let me go do it. And I'm just sitting there going, it's Agatha and Ebony. It's gotta be Agatha and Ebony. Like, why else are they able to break and have direct conversation with Wanda? Like, why else? And the end of the episode happened. Now I don't think that that's true either. But anyway, when that kind of gets, their conversation finishes, we jump to Vision, and we see he is not patrolling. He is just walking around the neighborhood, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And this is where the episode gets arguably its darkest. And it's dark, like pretty much the whole episode, but it's much like I mentioned it in my non-spoiler. You're in a 90s sitcom, so you have that 90s score playing underneath these really, really dark moments where it's like it almost makes you want to laugh or enjoy what you're watching. And this moment in particular was the one where I was like, this is so dark, yet you don't feel like it's dark because the episode is telling you that it's not, while simultaneously telling you it's probably the darkest stuff we've seen. So Vision starts moving away from Wanda, and as he gets further and further toward the outskirts of town, you start to notice glitches, right? Like Herb, the way Herb kind of glitched when Wanda had stuff going on inside. You're seeing it happen. Like there's a lady who's hanging up like something on a clothing line, and her hand just keeps going like this. And you see like her husband has like a leaf thing, or maybe it's a pumpkin, and he's like going to put it down, and he comes back up, and then he goes back down, and he comes back up. And Vision's just looking at it like so disturbed, and then you zoom in like on the woman, and just a single tear rolls out her eye, and you're like, oh my god. Wanda isn't controlling everything at all times, much like she said to Vision. She's like, you really think I can control all these people all the time? I can't do that. And we all assume that she was talking about she's got outside help helping her control everybody. No. Her grip is firm, but she can't control everybody. So as she gets further and further away from people, they start to glitch. Or if you get all the way out to the very outskirts where Vision ends by the end of the episode, everyone is just flat out frozen, not moving, not talking. And you're like, with that tear roll, you're like, they are consciously aware of what their bodies are doing, that Wanda has invaded them, and they're like legitimately in probably physical and mental pain going through all this. And I was just like, that is so dark and like so twisted. And I love that Marvel is going there, because we know, Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness is going to be our first horror movie in the MCU. And if you're going to push in on a horror movie, man, you were setting up some really scary stuff in this show. And you literally are just like, damn. And at this point, we don't even see the people on the outskirts. So you're just like, these people are trapped. They know they're trapped, and they can't get out. And then we jump into our commercial. And this is probably the darkest of all the commercials, and the first one that doesn't directly reference something from Wanda's past, but rather something that Wanda is doing right now. And it's a commercial for a product called Yo Magic, and it looks like a yogurt cup, which, all sorts of like fast and easy way to consume things in cool or fun looking ways for kids was very popular. Like, you want to get your kid to eat, like this, well, get him like a Lunchable where he can make his own pizza, or, like you get that feel, and that's what this is. And you watch this shark come up to like a guy who's on a deserted island, and he's like, I'm so hungry. He's like, here, man, take this. And he's like, thanks. Like, what is it? And he's like, it's Yo Magic. And then you see him like trying to open, and he can't get it, and his hand just keeps flicking as he looks at it. It just keeps going like this, and then we see him aging all the way into a skeleton, and then he falls over, and then they're like, Yo Magic, the snack for survivors, and you're like, that is what I think that commercial just told you what it's like to be a person inside this anomaly. Like, you have the thing you want. Is right there, but you can't open it or get to it unless she okays it, more or less. So dark, and I love it, man. Like, I love the fact that Phase 4 just has a very different feel and vibe than anything we've gotten in the first 3 phases. And granted, I know it's only WandaVision, and certainly Falcon and Winter Soldier looks much more traditional MCU, but I am loving what they're doing, and I'm loving the places that they're willing to go. So then we get out of that commercial, and we're back with Wanda and Pietro, and Pietro is prying again. He's kind of getting into it, and at one point, she goes, "Where's your accent?" You know, like she's constantly questioning because she doesn't believe it's him, even though he's acting semi-right. And he's like, I could ask you the same thing. Where's your accent? He's like, it's all a little fuzzy, man. Like, nothing is quite exactly what I want, what you got going on. And he's like, my main plan was, to come here, kind of like, take jabs at your husband, run around with the Rugrats and get into mischief, and give you grief. And when he says give you grief, it's like I'm gonna constantly give you a hard time. But when you correlate that with what we heard Monica say last week, like grief is the thing that Wanda's going through. And then he says, isn't that what you wanted? Like, that's what you wanted. You wanted, almost like he's saying, like, you wanted your grief. So I gave it to you. Here it is. And now I'm back on the like, dude, this is Mephisto or Nightmare or somebody. Like, there is definitely an outside presence. And that's all going to get shattered momentarily. But, you're just kind of watching them that, like, yeah, I was here, man. Like, this is what you wanted. You called me out of the darkness, man. And I showed up. And while they're talking, you get the same thing that happened to Vision, where she kind of has like a break and sees reality. Where Vision, you saw the corpse body that he has. Here, you see a corpse body for Pietro, but he does not turn into Aaron Taylor Johnson, and the bullet holes aren't exactly in the right spot. And what's interesting is they showed Aaron Taylor Johnson's Pietro's death in the previously on WandaVision stuff, and like immediately I was like, oh, they showed us two shots where we could clearly see the bullets. When you see it on Pietro, they're not the same. So I think he's an imposter, not the real Pietro. That's the one thing that this episode, I think, confirmed for me, and hopefully for everybody. This is not Quicksilver anymore. Like, this is not who we think this is. Because he's not playing by the rules. And, the kids are running around or whatever, and, or I guess right before she has this conversation with Quicksilver, she goes like this and she stops. Or no, I'm sorry. Right after this, the kids come back and Tommy's like, oh, Mom, a couple blocks up, they got like full chocolate bars. Or maybe Billy says it. And they're like, can we go? And I think Tommy kind of looks at Quicksilver, at Pietro, and kind of gets a nod, and he just takes off and comes back, and they're like, oh, you got super speed. And that was the moment where I was like, well, they were Pietro was constantly running them around. This is the birth of Tommy's powers, and we see them happen like right on screen, and he's so jacked about it, and he's like, I got super speed, and he just starts running all over the place, and you're just seeing the blur, and Wanda just goes like this and stops him mid-run, which is crazy scary, because like he's moving, you think about just the different ways that we've seen the Quicksilver motion. Like, he's moving so fast, everything else should be slowing down. And in like a Flash v Superman type bit, Wanda's just like, I got you. And, she basically is like, look, that's fine. Go do what you gotta do. Just don't go past Ellis Ave. And we jump back to outside the anomaly. And Darcey has started hacking. She's trying to get into Hayward's stuff, and she's kind of going through everything, and like clearly, like she's like, Hayward's got some secrets, man. Like, we're getting into some things, and they find out that they've been he has a way inside. He can see inside, and basically what he's done is by tracing decaying vibranium, which is literally what Vision is. He can track Vision's movements, and while he's tracking his movements, anytime he comes in contact with somebody, that they're somehow able to put a blip on there. So Jimmy Woo's like, he knows how many people are inside. He's got to have a pretty solid number at this point, like with all of these dots. And like, how come all of the dots on the outside aren't moving? Are they like, what's going on with that? Like, I don't, you don't really understand. Monica's gearing up. She's like, yes, my way back in is going to be here pretty soon. We just got to go drive out, a little bit and meet my guy. She said guy, and now no longer think that it might be the little Skrull girl, Talos' daughter, that she called. Maybe maybe it's Hank Pym. Like, maybe it's the Pyms, and they've created some kind of vehicle for her to go through. Which, by the way, from when she texted to when she's gonna get this automobile that should be able to go through the anomaly, seems very fast to get a car created. But nevertheless, like, that was where I was like, ooh, maybe it is the Pyms, or maybe it's Mr. Fantastic. Like, that's one of the other things that I've heard rumor mill wise. Like, my brain immediately went to Pym, and then I heard the Talos' daughter thing, and then I heard the maybe it's actually Mr. Fantastic, like the Fantastic Four, because they would be aerospace scientists at this time. They could just be in the world and not be, the Fantastic Four yet. So maybe we're bringing in Reed Richards. I don't know. I think Reed Richards or Hank Pym are very likely in this scenario, because either she worked with Reed prior to this, or, her mom had known Hank for a long time. It's probably one of those two. But nonetheless, like, damn, that was quick. So they're getting ready to go, and Darcey's like, you can't leave. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you cannot go back inside. Hayward's got your blood results. And Monica, you've gone through the anomaly twice. You've gone through that force field twice. It is reconstructing your cells. Like, it's done massive damage to you. Like, Darcey was very, very caught off guard by how her scans came back blank. And Monica, when I watched it and she said it, I was like, well, she just confirmed that Wanda, like, for a minute you're like, oh my gosh, Wanda is actually going to create mutants. Like, no mutants at the end of, House of M. Mutants, which was something that I kind of thrown out there early on. Like, maybe that will be what happens. Like, if they flip-flop it, like, we got rid of mutants in the comics, we don't have mutants in the MCU, so we're going to get mutants now. Immediately I was like, oh, oh yes, like, Wanda's gonna create mutants. That's so, like, everybody inside the anomaly could come out with powers. Like, everyone that's inside the anomaly could theoretically be an X-Man or one of the mutants that we're familiar with, and we just don't know it yet. But the way that she reacts when Darcey tells her that, Monica's just like, I've seen more tests than I care to think about. Cells deconstructing and reconstructing and pulling themselves apart and breaking apart and decaying and undecaying and all these things that are going on with the cells that Darcey was talking about. She's like, I know about this. Like, whatever, I'm gone. And at that moment I was like, oh damn, maybe she's already had her powers. Like, that's why she didn't want to have the scan, right? She didn't want to have another test run. She didn't want to have more blood drawn, because she's familiar with this, because she's had these powers, and maybe she just keeps them under wraps, doesn't let anyone know that she has these powers. But then I was talking to my friend before I sat down for this, and while we were talking, I was like, or the tests that she's seen more than she cares to think about are Maria's tests. And the nothing on the scan, what the way cells are constructing and reconstructing and deconstructing, maybe that's what was going on with Maria. Maybe that's what led to the cancer, and maybe Maria's powers came from Captain Marvel, which is why Monica is not cool with Captain Marvel anymore. I don't know. It could go either way. But one thing we know for sure, we're going to see Monica get powers. They'll either be her powers, she'll be Spectrum, or she's getting the same powers that her mom has, and she'll be a photon for us. Could probably go either way. And right now I'm like, after I said it out loud and I started talking about it, I was leaning more toward, like, maybe this is what she saw with Maria, simply so that Wanda could be creating mutants, because that would be so freaking awesome, man. So anyway, that's what's going on with Darcey and them, and as they're kind of figuring out, like I said, the last thing they see before we jump back into the anomaly is Jimmy's like, how come nobody's moving on the outside? And we jump back into Vision, who is now in the outskirts of the town. And on the outskirts, no one's moving, man. They're just all frozen. Like, there's a group of kids that aren't moving, and there's just some random lady looking at them. Vision goes up. He's like, are those your kids? Are you watching these kids? What's going on? How come no one's talking to me? And as he starts looking around, he realizes, like, nobody's moving. So he takes off his costume by just morphing it away, and then he looks like regular Vision, shoots up into the sky, and where he looks back toward the center of town, where Wanda is, there's lots of activity. You can tell people are doing things, there's commotion, you can hear sounds, and then he spins, and as he spins, you see that commotion getting less and less until you're on the very outskirts, and the very outskirts, everything is just still. And you're like, this is so effed up. And then he spots a car with its lights on, sitting at a stop sign. So he knows this is not a person that was on the outskirts that's been like this, but a person who maybe drove into the outskirts. And when he gets there, there's Agnes. That's that shot that we've seen in the trailer where he wakes her up. And she actually can talk. And she's not making much sense. And what's cool is as he's walking towards... Or no, I'm sorry, this is after. So we'll go back to what we see in the shot. But as he's talking to her, she starts I think she just starts maniacally laughing or something, where he's like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna just do it. And he wakes her up. And just like we saw in the trailers, she wakes up to, oh my god, you're an Avenger. You're the Vision. And he's like, I am the Vision, but what is an Avenger? And she's like, you don't know. How do you not know? Am I dead? Is this real? What's happening right now? He's like, why would you be dead? She's like, because you're dead. Agnes knows who Vision is. And the whole time it's going on, I'm like, okay, here's Agatha. And then you start to find out what's actually happening. He's like, Agnes, I want to help, but I don't know what's going on. And she basically just point blank tells him, let's just get out of here. She's like, we can't leave. Wanda won't let us even think about leaving. Wanda is doing all of this, and we are all just trapped. And she seems like just a scared person who clearly did not know Wanda before, and it is like I said, it's just lost. Like everybody, she knows Vision died because she probably didn't get snapped away. She didn't get blipped. Watch the news. I mean, friggin' Jimmy, there must have been a helicopter or something above this fight catching video footage or something, because everybody seems to know stuff. But you just listen to their entire conversation, and you're like, she doesn't sound like someone who is aware that this is going on, or is aware, but has no contribution to it, and didn't seem like she was aware prior to Wanda doing things. And she just, as she's talking, she just starts to lose it, and I think that's where she starts maniacally laughing and stuff, and the Vision puts her back in, and he's like, Agnes, I promise I'm gonna get out of here, and I'm gonna figure out what's going on and get some kind of help. And Agnes is put back into the trance sort of, and she's just like, okay, funny neighborhood neighbor, and she just turns away. And then Vision starts to walk straight, and as Vision walks straight, camera zooms out, and we're on the corner of something Hill and Ellis, and you're like, Wanda said don't go past Ellis Street because that's where the barrier is. And then we get the shot of Vision going for the jailbreak, man. He's heading right for it, and we jump back inside, and you have I guess this is where Darcey talks to Monica about the blood work, and how the Hex is rewriting her own DNA, and she said, she's seen these types of tests too many times. Then when we're done with that bit, we jump back into the anomaly, and we're seeing Quicksilver and Wanda again. And this is where he's like, man, isn't Westview, New Jersey just charming as hell? And you're like, oh man, is the big bad's goal to recreate hell on earth to some degree? He seems to be thoroughly enjoying everything that Wanda's doing. Pietro continues to talk about the Hex, and now they're kind of sitting down while the kids are doing whatever, and he's legitimately prying, and to the point where he's kind of almost praising her, and Wanda's like, wait, you don't think what I did is wrong? And he's like, wrong? I'm impressed. How did you do this? And he's literally, it sounds like he is coaxing her into telling him what's going on, how she's doing it, how she's controlling it. And she's like, I honestly don't know. She's like, I don't know how I did this. All I remember was just overwhelming amounts of pain and grief. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, before we even get there, when he's like, I'm impressed, this was interesting. He goes, this is way more powerful than you just giving people nightmares or what's it called? Red wiggly woos out your hands. Like, he's making fun of her magical powers. And that was the moment where I was like, maybe this is some sort of entity that's involved in the magic world. And new Wanda was there, but she just had these red wiggly woos coming out of her hand, and she could give people a nightmare that manifests itself physically. Almost like he was aware, but not powerful enough. Then this happened, and it's like, that's more power than I even thought she had. How'd you do this? And that kind of seems to be the way that he's prying to her, where you're like, he's trying to find out what's going on. And then Wanda's like, I don't know how I did this. I just remember feeling so much loss and just being completely alone. And then just nothingness. Like, endless nothingness. And before she can finish what she's saying, like, all right, so when did the nothingness become this hex reality? And she looks, and that's where she has that mental break and sees dead Pietro, like bullet wounds and like blood on his face, which doesn't look at all the way that Pietro looked when he got shot. Like, it's close, but it's a little off. I think another tip to the fact that this isn't Quicksilver, like, this isn't our Quicksilver either, which is one of the things that he's trying to pass off. Like, I'm your brother, came back from the dead, you brought me back. When I came here, I started looking like this guy. So I don't think it's our Pietro. I don't think it's the Fox Pietro. In all honesty, I'm probably falling right into a Kevin Feige trap, but with the amount of references to hell, demon spawn, even just referencing directly nightmares. It feels like maybe Quicksilver is Nightmare, and Nightmare is gonna be the big bad in Doctor Strange 2, possibly. We know that there have been rumors that he's gonna show up in that movie, so maybe we're architecting that big bad for that movie while also simultaneously bringing Wanda along. But yeah, so she doesn't know, like, was it an accident? Was it exactly like Vision said to her? Like, I kind of thought that maybe you did this inadvertently, and now you're starting to realize that you have control on things. And like, it's the simplest answer, yet is it? I don't know. Then we go back outside, and Darcey discovers, she stays behind. Wu and Monica leave to go meet up with her guy to get this thing that's going to get her back inside of the anomaly. And Darcey's like, I gotta stay, because there's something super classified on here that Hayward is trying to hide, and I need to figure out what it is. And while we don't see exactly what it is, we know that there's a ton of video files in this folder, and it says, like, classified, like a secret classified weapons program. I'm thinking Hayward is gonna be our lead to AIM. I just, again, probably falling for Kevin Feige. The clues that he wants us to see and wants us to project onto here, but it certainly feels like whatever Hayward was doing with Vision over the last 3-something years, probably, because Maria was still alive for the first 2, is leading to some sort of weaponry that he, I think, is gonna sell off or give to AIM or create AIM with. That's where I'm at. And as she sees, she even says, she's like, oh, Hayward, you bad boy type. She doesn't say bad boy, but something like that. Then we jump back into Vision, and Vision breaks out. He gets to the wall, and he just starts walking. And what's kind of crazy is, as he's forcing his way through, unlike Wanda, who split it and walked through, this is also before she made it like a hardcore barrier at the end of last episode. But like, the way you saw her split it, not happening with Vision. And Vision is literally like, if this is the wall, it's bowing out like this. And it's not letting him go. And for a minute, I was like, he's not going to get out of here. And as he starts to come through, naturally, everybody comes up. And Darcey is there, so she comes running out because she hears all the commotion. And not thinking like she could get in trouble being out in this area, because she's not supposed to be there still. And you see Vision struggling to try to break free. And Hayward even says, like, he doesn't want to be in there. He wants to get out. And as he finally is starting to break out of it and like push his way through, and like I said, he's pulled the anomaly with him, and like it's stretched out. But as he's finally starting to break through, he starts to disintegrate. Like, you literally are seeing, like, it's pulling. It seems like it's almost pulling him in, not letting him leave. And then his cape disintegrates. Then pieces of him you see like a piece of his shoulder fly off, and Darcey's like, stop him, like, somebody help him, he's literally decaying in front of our eyes. Like, he's gonna die. And Hayward hears her. She goes to run. So they stop her. They handcuff her to the car that's like right there. And you're literally just watching Vision die. And it is so disturbing, man. Like, it semi looks like he's being dusted. And those particles are just getting pulled into the anomaly to the point where I was like, oh man, Wanda is in control right now too. She's gonna pull Vision back, even if it's in pieces, and then the hex will probably put him back together. But then he actually breaks through and just slumps over. And the way he slumps over and falls, you don't see his face change, and there's no crater in his head. He still looks like Vision. So very much like Monica. Inside, what you would look like inside, if that's what Wanda's done to you, you come outside, you still look like that. But to Wanda can see the truth, which is kind of interesting. But he slumps over and ends up in the exact position that he was lying in at the end of Infinity War. And you're like, that's so messed up. And they jump back in and you're like, they're gonna kill Vision. Like, I think they're gonna kill Vision. Like, this is crazy. Like, talk about like Wanda becoming a full villain. Like, because they messed with things and she lost grip on Vision started investigating things and left, she's gotta lose him for a second time. And you come back in and, we go to the boys. We're on Billy, actually. You see Tommy is moving around, and all of a sudden Billy just goes like this. He starts to hear things. You can hear what's going on outside. Like, he hears Vision. I think he hears Vision like tell Agnes like things will be okay, and then you can hear Hayward and them talking about him coming out. But just like Wanda, hands out and stops Tommy dead stop. He's like, Dad, there's something wrong with Dad. We have to find Mom. And they go and they run to Wanda. And like, as this is happening, you're kind of going back and forth and seeing what's happening with Vision as he starts to, like, pieces start to fly off, and all that stuff that we were just talking about is happening as we're bouncing back and forth. And they get to Wanda, and he's like, Mom, something's wrong with Dad. I don't know what's going on. And she's like, Billy, you need to focus. Like, just breathe and focus. Like, you need to tell me exactly what's going on. And then Billy gets a clear thing. He's like, they think he's dying because he can hear Darcey. He's in a lot of trouble, Mom. And Wanda proceeds to do the scariest thing that we've ever seen. And what's crazier is while Billy is doing all of this, Pietro goes, so, I mean, hey, it's not like your dead husband can die twice, right? And Wanda doesn't even think. Blasts him with one of her red, like, energy blasts. He goes flying, and the minute that happened, I was like, if you didn't believe it now you have to believe it. Like, the way he's acting isn't like Pietro, and Wanda would not have hit him like that. If that was actually her brother, she would not have done anything that could have physically harmed him. Specifically, if she thinks that he might also be a corpse. So I was like, done. And then Billy focuses, tells her what she needs to do, and you see Wanda just go full Scarlet Witch, dude. It's so cool and so terrifying at the same time. Her powers radiate out of her, go through the entire anomaly, and freeze everybody. Like, she literally traps everybody, dead stop. And then her eyes are closed and you can see them darting around underneath her eyelids. And you're like, she is scanning the entire anomaly to figure out where Vision is. And then she does, and her eyes start she does, and you can tell something is happening. And they go back outside, and Darcey's like, guys, something is Monica in the rear view as her and Jimmy are driving. It's like, oh my, something is happening. And Jimmy's like, oh, the anomaly is moving, like, punch it. And like, she pedaled to the floor. They take off. We see Hayward also trying to get away. Everybody that's just outside the anomaly, as it starts to move toward Vision, everybody starts taking off. And you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, Wanda is just simply shifting the anomaly like 6 feet so that it can re-encompass Vision. And as it's moving, like, Darcey gets left behind. Everybody runs. Darcey's still handcuffed to this truck that's right in front of Vision. And it's coming. And you're like, oh my gosh. And it finally gets Vision. You're like, it's going to stop right. And it goes right past her. Right past her. And Darcey gets pulled in. And they don't show us Darcey. We get to see some of the other things that transform, because Wanda just expands. She's not moving. She is expanding the anomaly to engulf the entire sword base. And the only people that get away are Monica and Jimmy, because they were already on their way out. And then freaking Hayward, man. Hayward and like 2 or 3 of his people are in the car and they're taking off and he's driving and like you see it chasing. I'm like, please, of all the people that I want Wanda to put inside of this anomaly and be physically in control of after hearing how painful and terrifying and horrible it is, I want it to be Hayward, because screw this dick, man. Like, get this guy and he gets away. Oh, so unsatisfactory. But once Wanda realizes that she's pretty much engulfed everything, and as she's engulfing Sword turns into a carnival on the outskirts of town. So people are becoming carnies, make you think that Darcey is also going to be part of the carnival. So be interested to see if there's any comic nods or references to how she looks inside, or just what she looks like inside, because we don't see it. But we see that she's created a carnival that's now part of the anomaly, and the anomaly didn't move, it was expanding. She was spreading it out so that less people can interfere with what she's got going on. And we come back in, and she opens her eyes, and they are just glowing red, and slowly they die down, and the episode ends. And I was like, how can you end there? In the first week, that did feel too fast. And on second watch, it didn't feel that bad. But like I said, a spooktacular special should be an hour long. We should have either gotten an hour-long episode that had like a to-be-continued, a second commercial, and then gone in, or we should have gotten that to-be-continued tag, like where they just shouldn't. I don't know. I just want all of it. We got 3 episodes left. We're so close, and they are keeping us on our toes, man. To the point where, like, now I think even when I pick up on things, like the amount of, like, Nightmare gets mentioned twice. One other person earlier in the episode says something about a nightmare. Like, just all these references to hell and demon spawn, like, it seems so apparent, but like, I really have no clue where we're gonna end or land, and it feels like they're trying to misdirect us, because all the theories that have been spit out over the last few weeks almost all just got decimated when it was like, no, Wanda is in full control, and I don't think Agnes is Agatha Harkness anymore. I don't know what's going on with Pietro, but it's not, like, for a minute I was like, maybe it is Pietro from the outside. This is like some meta joke, like this is all just Wanda. It's definitely not all just Wanda, but I don't know how much the big bad is actually physically involved. I think it's more of a Wanda did something crazy powerful, and people that have magic abilities maybe can sense that. And they were like, huh, she used to have these red wobbly woos coming out of her hand, and now she's reconstructing reality. We need to go find out this and try to take that power or get it in some way, which it seems to be through the kids. So I don't know, man. Like, at this point, I think my most valid theory, and if you want to see those theories, check them out right here. I put them up right before the episode hit. I watched them slowly all get dashed, it seemed like. But it almost feels like maybe the Magneto Quicksilver thing is what's going, like, maybe that is it. Maybe we're gonna get that crossover, or maybe it's just Wanda and there's another big bad that she's gonna have to fight, but like she ain't gonna be good either. Like that look of the red eyes, it's the second time we've seen it now with the drone images. It seems like she is going down the bad path, because they're gonna try to stop her from having what she wants, and she's finally happy and she's not alone, and they're gonna take that from her. And Vision's gonna be a major proponent because he's pulled back in. Is he gonna remember what happened? Is he slowly gonna remember? Is he just put back into the trance? All these things that we need to know, and we've now finished the first 2 acts. 3 episodes left. We got 1 act left in this bad boy, and I am stoked. So much so that I've talked for over an hour. I tell you, I appreciate you guys for sticking around and hanging with me. Anytime I'm just talking and rambling for this long, as we break down a 28 minute episode over the course of 60 minutes. But that's how much they pack in. It's crazy how much they get in there. But I'm obviously loving this show. I love this episode. I don't know if it surpassed last week for my favorite. Last week, I think, is still my favorite. That episode was so freaking good. But man, are there major things starting to shape up and go down in WandaVision. And it feels like every theory that's out there right now is on shaky legs, man. Like, maybe none of them are going to happen. Maybe Kevin Feige has completely fooled us and just had us play right into his trap. It really feels more like Feige was baiting us to buy into things so that we don't see what's really going on. But now we're down to the last few episodes. How much more can they hide? clearly enough to the point where I don't feel confident in anything with this show other than Wanda is so powerful that maybe by the end of this series, that expansion is going to be even more. Maybe this is going to turn into like a full House of M, and like maybe Multiverse of Madness is happening inside the Anomaly. Like maybe by Spider-Man, the Anomaly has grown to encompass most of the East Coast, right? Like we're in South Jersey. Maybe it spreads up to New York, and that's what affects Peter Parker. And by the time we got to Doctor Strange, maybe it's all of America. Maybe it's the whole globe. Maybe it's just this little town of Westview that just got a little bit bigger. Oh man, we are going down some crazy paths, and I am so stoked about every single second of it. So there you go, man. You know me. I love the heck out of this show, and even though it drives me nuts and it makes me think so freaking much, I love it because we're so engaged. I have never been this engaged with anything that Marvel has given us, and if this is what their TV shows are gonna do, man, get ready because they're not stopping. I think we get a week off between this and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Gotta be a lot of 3 a.m. wake-ups on Friday, but I'm so about it because this stuff is so good. So those are all my spoiler thoughts on episode 6, a all-new Halloween spooktacular. Really fantastic stuff. I'll be interested to see if we pick up right where we left off and still in the Halloween costumes, or if it's going to be a completely different episode altogether, because some of those big, tacular type episodes usually involve 2 to create, a 2-part, 1-hour episode. And it certainly feels like it should get another 30 minutes. So I certainly look forward to all of that stuff. But I'm done talking. I want to know what you're thinking. Are your theories still alive? Do you feel like your theories are dashed? Did you pick up on anything in this episode that we didn't talk about or mention? Anything you're thinking good, bad, and different about WandaVision? Down below, feel free to go spoiler crazy, as this is the spoiler conversation. I look forward to talking to all you guys down there. I want to know your theories. I want to know if you think I'm onto anything, if we're all just lost and Kevin Feige is the puppet master that we just follow everything. Anything you're thinking, good, bad, and different, down below. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the old C-Man every Friday morning when we're watching WandaVision, anytime we're talking TV, movies, trailers, you haven't yet, I urge you, if you like what we're doing or what I'm doing, come join the C-Man's Cinema. Sit down. Be a C-Man, be a C-Maniac in C-Maniac Nation by hitting that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. Until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema, sit down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Halloween Spooktacular. Well, as I live and breathe, you still here? Check out a video like this one or this one and hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the cinema. Sit down.